long ago in Sonoma County, California. The hills and valleys rang with the sound of steam-powered sawmills, turning redwood trees into lumber. As time went on, the steam-powered mills were replaced with much larger electric mills. One by one, the old mills were shut down and disappeared, except for one. Nestled in a valley outside of Sebastopol, California, that still exists today. This is the story of that mill. Wade Sturgeon was born on December 29, 1878. As a boy growing up in Sonoma County, California, near the township of Bodega, he was surrounded by a flourishing lumber industry. Sailing schooners and trains hauled millions of board feet of redwood lumber every year to San Francisco and other rapidly growing cities. Wade's stepfather was a foreman at a local sawmill, so it was a natural step for Wade to become a timber faller in his teens. By the time he was 34 years old, Wade was ready to open his own sawmill. The devastating San Francisco earthquake had struck only 6 years earlier, creating an insatiable demand for lumber. In Coleman Valley, near the village of Occidental, he set his sawmill up. He spent $700 buying equipment, including a Joshua Hendy head rig and carriage that had been used by the Corbell brothers before they started their famous champagne and wine business. Little did he know that 4 generations later, Wade Sturgeon's mill would still be run by the family. Wade's son Ralph, now deceased, looks back on those early years.
My name is Ralph Sonoma Sturgeon. I was born off Joy Road. Long about to 1912 or 13 is when he started to begin to think he'd like to go into sawmilling. They weren't making any money anyhow, and he got into sawmilling, he made less. It was known as Sturgeon's Mill then. They had it running in 1914 because we have the pictures that my dad had a photographer over there and showed the pictures of logging and sawmilling.
By 1923, most of the nearby trees had been cut down, and Wade Sturgeon and his sons Ralph and Merle began looking for a new site for their mill. They found a heavily forested canyon on Green Hill Road in Sebastopol, and piece by piece, they dismantled the mill and brought it to its new home. Wade and his wife Esther built a small cabin beside the mill and created a unique and memorable garden surrounding their woodland home. By 1943, Wade was ready to retire from sawmilling, so his son Ralph needed a new partner.
My name is James Einer Henningsen. Went to Anley High School, which was 6 miles from where we lived, and I walked every bit of that both ways until they got a bus on the last year I was in school.
And Anley is where I met James E. Henningsen.
When we started, Ralph came down. I was working in San Francisco in the building trades down there. And Ralph came down one Sunday with his family and asked if I would like to go into business with him here. And so I finally made up my mind that maybe that would be a good thing to do. And so Ralph and I shook hands, never signed any papers or anything. And I came up here and I told Ralph, I said, here's $5,000. I says, when this is gone, I says, we're out of business. And so we kept going for 21 years anyway.
By 1963, Jim Henningsen had had enough of running a sawmill and suggested selling the mill for scrap. His son, Harvey Henningsen, who had grown up around the mill, begged his father not to destroy it. Jim told his son that if he loved it so much, he could have his share. So Harvey became partners with Ralph Sturgeon. By now, Sturgeon's mill had become an antique. No longer profitable, it was put to sleep and slumbered for the next 30 years. All through this time, Ralph took care of the equipment, keeping all the parts cleaned and oiled. After Ralph Sturgeon passed away in 2003, his son, Bob, and Harvey became partners. Harvey never lost hope of someday bringing the mill back to life. It's been a long haul, but through the hard work and generosity of many people, Sturgeon's mill is now being restored.
Hi, my name is Harvey Henningsen. I'm the president of the Sturgeon's Mill Restoration Project, and my dad was James Einer Henningsen. For me personally, it has been a lifetime goal to get this mill running again, and it's a dream fulfilled. I feel so very fortunate and blessed about it. But the biggest blessing of all at this mill is our volunteer crew. We have over 40 dedicated volunteer crew members who show up once a month to work on the mill, to patch it back together, and then 4 to 5 complete weekends out of the year, they come to be the crew in this mill. We patched the mill together, and in 2009, the mill again ran for the first time in 35 years on live steam.
My name is Bob Sturgeon. I've been around here all my life. And all through my life, my young childhood and into my teens and even into my early 20s, I worked in the mill doing just every job in here. The worst job I ever had was I actually had to crawl inside the boiler and get the scale out of the boiler that would build up from the water. And I always, if you're going to have claustrophobia, that's where it's going to show right there, because I was afraid somebody was going to close the end up on me. Fortunately, they didn't, because here I am. I did not like this sawmill, because every moment I was here, I had to work, it seemed like. I did not like this sawmill. I didn't like it even when I was in my 20s, because it was too repetitious for me. Same thing over and over and over again. Time dragged by for me. But in later years, as you get older, you tend to appreciate things a lot more, and now I love the sun we got. In the cold days, we worked in the wintertime an awful lot. It was really cold in this canyon because we never got any sunshine. And in the mornings and at noon, we'd just sit right on top of the boiler to keep warm. And the old timers, way back, they would tell stories of logging, the old logging days and stuff like that. And my dad said, well, let's go back to work, and toot toot on the whistle, and away we went again.
So my dad was the front man at the mill, which means that he was in charge of the office. Ralph ran the sawmill.
They lasted for 22 years, so I guess it was a pretty good partnership. Yeah. And then Harvey and myself got to be friends, and here we are, Harvey and me partners again in the next generation. That was just pretty neat. And then my sons, which would be the fourth generation, they're interested in it too. My son Ron is a sawing down there, and my other son Dan, he's a trimmerman. So it's working out good, and they seem to be interested, so hopefully it will keep going through the family. About 8 years ago, I was busy working, making a living. I didn't show much interest in the mill at all at that time, but after I retired, and then I really got into it, and I love this sound of an old mill now.
My name is Esther Doty. My father was Ralph Sturgeon. I did not grow up here, but I spent many hours, many days here with my grandparents and my father. I enjoyed being with my grandmother in the gardens, and that's what we did. She was very gentle, sweet person. People came from all over the world, in fact, to see the gardens. They were unusual in the fact that there were a lot of native plants. There were also a lot of lilies that my grandfather propagated, and he was famous for those. The gardens were gorgeous. We hope to restore them again.
I'm Ron Sturgeon. I'm the grandson of Ralph Sturgeon and son of Bob Sturgeon. This is my cousin Joan and my brother Dan.
That's right.
I'm Dan Sturgeon, and my great-grandfather started this sawmill. My grandfather ran it. My dad worked for him. I was too young to work here, which my dad said I was pretty lucky. Well, it shouldn't shut down because it's intact, and it's a piece of living history, and people can come here, and it's like stepping back in time.
The steam engines, the mechanics of where everything started from, it's really important that we preserve that in the history of it, and how manual labor really enforced a good work ethic, and you appreciate the dollar that you work for. We've had 5 generations now in this family, and we're continuing to use the mill and to show everybody the history of Sonoma County and the area that we helped build. A lot of the houses in the area are from the wood in this mill. So it's just a really nice piece of history that we're happy to preserve and want to share it with everyone.
The restoration is delightful to see. I grew up hearing it, and always the steam was coming up, and it was always just part of my life forever. And to have it restored is very special and spine-tingling sometimes, because there it is, and it's going again. The old equipment is in great shape. My father kept everything greased and oiled forever, to the point of where we teased him about it. This is very physical. We have crew that come. They are willing to give time, money, energy, muscles. And we have people come into the mill, and they just can't believe how exciting it is. They want to come back. They come back over and over again. And really encouraging for everybody, I think.
My name is Tom Schaefer, and I'm the eldest grandson of Ralph Sturgeon and son of Essie Sturgeon. I'd like to tell you a little bit about this engine. It's an 1850s Atlas steam engine. It's about 35 horsepower. These engines last so long because there are the engineering of them, they're just so simple. The steam engine, this is the main steam valves that operates the engine. There's a piston about this wide in here and a steam valve on the back that pushes steam from one end to the other, and then the steam valve lets the steam from the other side and pushes the piston back, so it gets power on both strokes of the engine. The push rod here, connected to this connecting rod to this crank wheel, turns reciprocating power into rotary power. And then this big bull wheel is what drives the belt that runs the head rig. Grandpa always said you wanted to run the engine as fast to make the spokes disappear. If you don't see the spokes, the engine's running at about the right speed. Probably the most asked question we get down here from visitors is what this whirligig is here. This is a spring flyball governor, and as the engine speeds up, centrifugal force throws these weights out and it closes the steam valve. And as it slows down, the weights go back and springs pull the weights back in, and it allows more steam into the engine and speeds the engine up, and that's how it regulates its speed without having somebody here opening and closing a valve constantly. And it's driven by this belt that's here. This engine drives the head rig, the sawdust conveyors, and the carriage up above. This is what you see operating the main saw upstairs. The other engines that are placed around do different jobs.
I've been affiliated with Sturgeon's Mill since 1943, 44, I guess. But the way I ended up here was Ralph Sturgeon hired me on the weekends to help him clean the mill out. By the time I was 15 or 16, I run the edger in this mill. I worked my way up to on the deck where I sawed all the long logs in half with an old drag saw by hand, and it used to be so hot up there that my nose would start to bleed sometimes, and Ralph would come out and he said, "Don't worry about that, that's just nature's pop-off valve." And he'd make me keep on working, and after we get them cut in half, we'd pull what we call the old snake out of the other side of the building, which was a hose, fire hose, to wash the logs down, keep the rocks out of the bark and what have you. And if you didn't watch yourself, why, that thing could knock you off the logs and you go for a wild ride on the end of a wild hose. But that's the way I got started in this mill. And when I first came up here in this country in 1943, why, I was a city boy. I didn't know a tree from the fence post. And Ralph and Jim, I look at as my second fathers, because my old man left home when he was 15 years old. And these guys got me through puberty and raised me up, so I've always been thankful for these two guys that got me through that part of my life. And they made a man out of me, and I still really appreciate that. And that's why I'm still hanging around.
My name is Bob Davis. I started to work here in 1953. I was hired as the straddle truck driver, which just moves piles of lumber from one place to another. Eventually wound up as their yard foreman. And all in all, there was very few accidents. The safety was a big thing, and even though it's a sawmill, we all come out with our fingers, and that's quite an achievement right there.
My name is Jay Meyer, and a friend showed me this mill last year, and I was able to come in and kind of walked across the ropes, and was started helping the guys, and they kind of wondered who this guy was that came in, and that was how I got my start here at Sturgeon's Mill. And the mill, to me, is probably the best time capsule of history that I've seen, still preserved in Western America, that is still functioning and still has the connections to the people and the area that hadn't changed a bit. So that's what's drawn me and makes me feel like preserving the mill and keeping its history alive. Hanging out with them has really been wonderful to get to know and meet all these people that are really the true grit of America. I enjoy being around them, and just the qualities that they have is something that's pretty dear to me. Love the mechanical end of it, all of the history of everything here has been really eye-opening for me, and just a real blessing for me to get to work with the old man's tools, so to speak. So, really been made part of the team here. Glad they gave me a chance.
This boiler was donated to us by Bay City Boilers. It sat for several years and needed lots of refurbishing, and we did as much as we could, but without help we were kind of at a standstill. And we were really blessed that we have an excellent crew of volunteers. A boiler man named Chris Christiani that said he would help us with the boiler, and he was a godsend in helping get things going. Well, it was just one day that everything seemed to work. We flipped the switch on, all the systems operating like they were supposed to. We had fire, and in probably 40 minutes we had a good head of steam. And I told my uncle that, hey, now's the time to go up and blow the steam whistle. So we went upstairs, and he blew the steam whistle for the first time since 1964 that it operated on steam. And probably in the next half hour we decided, well, we've gone this far, let's get the Atlas fired up, and maybe we could roll a log down and make some lumber. So we had just had a handful of people here, 3 or 4 people, and we were able to make 4 or 5 slabs of lumber, and figured we better quit while we're ahead. But that was another highlight of getting the mill going. Up until that point, there was a lot of hardships and things like that, but it was a great day.
My name is Sylvia Fisher, and I was Sylvia Henningsen. I'm Jim Henningsen's daughter. This office that I'm sitting in was built over the creek. There's a creek running right underneath us here. My dad built this office, and he was a carpenter by trade, and they were trying to save space. Mom was an artist, and so she did all the signs that were here. In fact, in front of the office it says no credit. And together it was a partnership. Everybody pulled together to make it work, and it's very, very exciting that it's back and coming to life again.
Well, my name is Barry Fisher, and I am associated with the mill through my wife, Sylvia. Her father, Jim Henningsen, was a mill owner. He was a partner in the mill with Ralph Sturgeon. I basically was a yard man, which meant that I was a salesman. It's an extremely interesting and educational place. I think the steam engine was invented like 1705 or so, and by the 1760s they were using it in steamboats. And by the 1770s or 80s, they had it in sawmills like this. And this is all the same equipment and technology that was used basically at the beginning of the Industrial Revolution. And it was in use until the 50s. So it's a living museum. And then if you would go to a plant like Scotia in Northern California and see what it looks like today, there is really a contrast. Very interesting how fast things have progressed.
So, how is it that Sturgeon's mill survived when all the other steam-powered sawmills vanished long ago? The mill's survival has been precarious at best for much of its history, but Sturgeon's mill was unique because of its famous woodland gardens. During the 1940s and 50s, over 4,000 people a year visited the gardens and marveled at the old mill. And Wade passed on his love and respect for the old equipment to his son Ralph, who in turn instilled a deep fascination in the heart of Harvey Henningsen.
It's just running as sweet as it ever did when I was a kid, and I'm sure it's running as sweet as it ever did when the Corbell brothers had it. When you think that this engine is 100 years old or more, it's just remarkable.
I'm going to read a poem called The Old Mill that our daughter, Lori Fisher Peelan, wrote when she was 12 years old. Lori's the granddaughter of Jim Henningsen. Old Mill. Now the saw is long since still, and the rasping song it sang is gone. But phantoms of a prosperous day with memories linger on. Tangled vines through the windows crawl, bearing blossoms of red and gold, and lacy ferns still shade the stream, as they did in the days of old. Though your old-time task is done, and no lumbermen enter your door, you offer a place of solitude to find my soul once more.
My dad, he'd have never dreamed in his wildest dream what has been going on here the last couple of years. He said to me many times, he says, Bob, that thing will never run again. He says, there's not that much interest. People just don't give a darn about old things anymore. And I thought to myself, Pop, I think you're wrong.
Aren't you a little close? No, we're fine. We're fine. Come on.